Her voice was calm, almost too calm. "Don't kiss me." That was all she said. No yelling, no disgust, not even a hint of emotion. Just that, as I leaned in, heart already half shattered, holding out the last piece of myself. I froze, lips inches from her cheek. She didn't look up. She kept scrolling her phone like I wasn't even in the room. The same phone she used to hide in her purse. The one with a new password every few weeks. The one I once found in the bathroom at 2 a.m. with a photo preview still glowing. I didn't ask why. I didn't press her. I just turned around and left the room. My hand was trembling, but I made sure she didn't see it. I sat in the garage with the light off. Not crying. Just stuck. Mentally jammed between heartbreak and humiliation. And that's when it hit me. She wasn't cheating anymore. She was done cheating. Done hiding. Now she just didn't care if I knew. The affair had moved into its next phase, indifference. I didn't need a confession. I didn't need her to say his name. I could see it in how she stirred her coffee without looking at me, and how she left the bathroom smelling like cologne that wasn't mine. And the towel, yes, the towel that was folded differently than how I fold them. He had stayed over. I was sure of it. I just didn't know when. But this wasn't about proof anymore. This was about dignity. So I started writing everything down, not to confront her, but to build a timeline. A quiet rebellion, on paper. Her lies, her absences, her strange laughter through closed doors. I even logged the sound of a zipper I heard last Thursday night when she said she was meditating. Every moment added up. And then, 2 days after the "don't kiss me," something strange happened. I woke up, and she was already dressed. Full makeup, bright lipstick, high heels I hadn't seen in a year. And she was humming. Humming. She noticed me watching her and said, like it was no big deal, "I'm going to meet Clara for brunch." Clara? Clara moved to Oregon 9 months ago. I know because we sent her a housewarming gift she never thanked us for. I just nodded. She left. I followed. She wasn't going to brunch. She wasn't going to see Clara. She was headed toward exit 21, the one that leads to the Rosewick Hotel. I knew that place. Everyone in town did. It was where politicians met their assistants, where suburban secrets lived behind locked doors and drawn curtains. I parked across the street, watched her disappear inside. I didn't storm in. I didn't call her. I took a picture of her walking in. Then I left. Quietly. But I wasn't going home. I was going to see someone I hadn't spoken to in a long time. Someone who knew how to make people talk without opening their mouths. Someone who was about to tell me everything I didn't want to hear. And once I had it all, I'd let her come to me. Not for an apology, but for the one thing she thought I'd always give for free, my attention. The person I was going to see wasn't exactly listed in the phone book. His name's Ellis. Not a PI, not a cop, just one of those guys who spent too much time in too many rooms where secrets lived. Used to do digital security consulting for lawyers. The kind of quiet guy who knew how to pull threads without making anything unravel publicly. I hadn't spoken to him in years. Last time was during a custody battle for my cousin's kid. Ellis had found deleted messages that changed the entire outcome of that case. I remember he didn't smile once through the whole process, like he wasn't proud of the truth, just tired of it. His office was now behind a vape shop. You had to knock twice, then once more. Just like old times. When I walked in, he didn't even ask how I was. He just looked up, read my face, and said, "You finally ready?" I handed him the photo. My wife. The hotel. Bright heels. A look on her face I hadn't seen since the early days of our marriage. That carefree smirk that didn't belong to me anymore. "Can you find out who he is?" I asked. Ellis nodded slowly, took the photo, then tilted his head. "You sure you want to know what else comes with that?" I didn't answer right away. I stared out his window at the grimy parking lot, where someone was yelling at their dog and a car alarm was going off for no reason. I wasn't sure of anything anymore, except that something inside me had changed the second she told me not to kiss her. He pulled out a thin black laptop, clicked a few things, and started digging. He was good, I'll give him that. Within minutes, he had scraped data off a license plate security cam from across the hotel. Got the guy's plate. Ran it. Found an address. "Name's Bryce Banning," Ellis said, spinning the screen toward me. I stared at the profile. Not some muscular gym guy. Not some millionaire. He was average. Too average. That was the twist of the knife. A real estate agent with a forgettable smile. 2 kids from a previous marriage. Divorced twice. Nothing about him screamed irresistible. And yet, she picked him. Ellis went further. Found texts. Emails. A Venmo transaction where she paid him for event coordination, likely cover for something far messier. But then something else caught his eye. He opened an encrypted folder that her email had connected to one I'd never have known existed. Inside were videos. Not of them. Of me. Footage from our living room camera. Private recordings. Snippets of me talking to myself, brushing my teeth, folding laundry. My voice. My words. Even that night, I cried quietly while watching an old movie alone. Ellis didn't press play. He just looked at me. Lowell, she's been sending these to someone. My stomach folded in on itself. Who? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Bryce, he confirmed. And he's been replying. Ellis turned the laptop. I saw a reply from Bryce under one of the clips. He looks like a sad puppy. Honestly, how does she stand it? I couldn't breathe. They weren't just cheating. They were watching me. Mocking me. Treating me like a character in a show neither of them respected. Ellis stood up, walked to his cabinet, pulled out a flash drive. Take this. It's all here. But be smart. Don't confront her yet. Let her talk first. She doesn't know you know. I nodded, thanked him quietly, and left without another word. Driving home, I didn't cry. I didn't feel rage. What I felt was colder. Numb. Like something sacred had finally rotted and collapsed inside me. Like I'd been grieving a marriage that died long before I noticed the funeral had even started. I walked in the front door just as she was pouring herself a glass of wine. She smiled. You're home early. For a moment, I thought I'd snap. That I'd throw the glass, scream, expose everything. But instead, I smiled back. Yeah, just wanted to see your face. She laughed, lightly, awkwardly. You're weird today. And I kissed her. Not because I wanted to. Because it was the last time she'd ever get to lie to me with a clean conscience. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was crying or spiraling, but because something inside me was organizing. Everything I had once ignored, denied, or excused began arranging itself into perfect rows in my mind. Her glances, her absences, her sudden interest in working late again. The night she came home smelling like a man's deodorant I didn't wear. It all made too much sense now. At 2:12 a.m., while she was curled beside me pretending to be asleep, I opened my laptop and started building a folder. I didn't name it revenge or evidence or anything dramatic. I just called it clarity. Inside it, I uploaded the files from Ellis's flash drive. Then I added my own notes. Timelines. Patterns. Quotes. Behavior shifts. Everything. I was treating it like a case. Because that's what it had become. The next day, I did something she never would have expected. I brought her flowers. Lilies. Her favorite. I even included a handwritten note that said, "For all the ways you make my life beautiful." I watched her face carefully when I handed them to her. A flicker of confusion. Then guilt. Then something worse. Pity. She took them. Thanked me with that tight smile people give when they've already made up their mind about you. Like I was some sentimental burden she'd have to deal with later. That night, I suggested we go out for dinner. Just the two of us. I told her I'd made reservations at the Lanebrook, the place we celebrated our 3rd anniversary, back when she used to cry from happiness after dessert. She hesitated, but agreed. I picked her up after work like it was a first date. She wore red. Not her usual soft tones. A bold, sharp red dress. I knew what it meant. She wasn't dressing for me. She was dressing for how she wanted to be seen. Someone still desirable. Independent. Unapologetic. We talked over wine and sea base, and she told me about her new manager, her team at work, how office morale had been weird lately. I listened like I cared. Like every word wasn't just another stone she was placing between us. Halfway through the meal, she reached for my hand. That startled me. She hadn't done that in months. I know I've been distant, she said softly. I've just been going through some things. You've always been so patient with me. She was testing me. Testing how much I'd accept. How much I still loved her, despite the things she thought I didn't know. I didn't flinch. Instead, I gave her a story of my own. I told her I'd been seeing a therapist, that I'd been working on my own emotional awareness, that I realized maybe I hadn't been the best communicator, that I wanted to be closer again, to trust her more. Her eyes flickered again, not with love, but calculation. She was buying it. The next 3 days, I played the role to perfection. Loving husband, recommitted partner, flowers, foot rubs, morning coffee in bed. I told her I wanted to try couples yoga. I made her playlist like I used to. I even left a love note on her windshield at work. And on the 4th day, she cracked. She came home early, caught me off guard. I had Ellis on speaker. We were going over financial activity. Bryce had transferred money to her account. Small amounts, but suspiciously frequent. It looked like she was funding something or someone. Ellis was trying to determine where the trail led. She walked in and heard his voice before I could hang up. "Who was that?" she asked. Instantly. "Just a coworker," I said casually, closing the browser. "Helping with a spreadsheet." Her eyes narrowed. "Since when do you do spreadsheets on speakerphone?" I looked at her, and for the first time, I let the silence breathe. Let her sit in it. Let her feel the chill of not being in control. Then I smiled and said, "Is everything okay?" She didn't answer right away. She stared at me like I'd changed. Like I was no longer the version of Lowell she thought she could keep in the dark. She said she was going for a walk, grabbed her keys, left in a hurry. I followed, 5 minutes later, in my car. She didn't go far. Just 2 blocks over, to a parked car I didn't recognize. Bryce's car. She didn't get in. She didn't kiss him. She just stood at the window, talking. Fast. Her hands were moving in that frantic, terrified way people do when something starts slipping out of their control. They were arguing. I watched from the corner under a street lamp, unseen. Then he shouted something and slammed the door shut in her face. She stood there for a second, lost, out of place, and suddenly, alone. That was the first time I saw fear in her posture. She wasn't afraid of me. She was afraid that the lie she built, the one she thought she could manage, was now collapsing from both ends. And I wasn't lifting a finger to stop it. It was a Thursday. I remember because she wore those thin gold earrings I once gave her for Valentine's Day, the same ones I found shoved in the glove box last month, tangled with a receipt from the Rosewick Hotel. She thought I hadn't noticed. She always underestimated the quiet kind of men, the ones who pay attention even when they don't speak. That morning, I left my laptop open. Not because I forgot. Because I wanted her to see it. I knew she'd go looking. Her paranoia had grown since that night I kissed her unexpectedly, the night she smiled back at me without knowing I already had everything. The file was there on the desktop, bold, obvious, unmistakable, clarity. I went out for groceries. Left my phone behind. Gave her a good hour alone in the house. It was a calculated risk, but I knew her patterns now better than she knew her own reflection. When I returned, she was sitting at the kitchen table with a mug of tea she hadn't touched, one hand clenched tightly around the mug handle, the other resting on the table like she didn't know what to do with it. Her eyes weren't red from crying, not yet, but her expression was hollow, frozen. She didn't speak as I came in. I walked past her, humming a tune under my breath, the same way I did weeks ago before she said those 4 words, "Don't kiss me." Now she didn't even say that. I waited, gave her time, then finally said, "You opened the folder, didn't you?" She flinched. Why would you do this?" she asked, barely above a whisper. That question was fascinating. She didn't ask what the folder was. She didn't ask how I got it. She just asked why I'd collected it all. I sat across from her. Let the silence breathe again. "You sent videos of me to him," I said. Calm. Level. No anger. Just disappointment that filled the room like slow smoke. She blinked, once. Slowly. Her lips parted, but nothing came out. Clips of me making dinner. Watching TV. Folding your clothes. You filmed me like a joke. Like I was some pathetic character in a show. It wasn't like that, she said instantly, reflexively, the way a person lies before even forming the sentence. No. I raised an eyebrow. Then what was it, Mallory? She winced at her name. That got her. She tried to shift blame. I wasn't happy. You didn't notice anything for months. I noticed everything, I said. That's when her voice cracked. Lowell, please. I didn't know how to fix things. Bryce, he paid attention. He listened. I let out a short, humorless breath. He also called me a neutered lapdog. That what you wanted in a man, Mallory? Someone who watches your husband cry on video and makes jokes about it. She turned pale. And then the part I'd been waiting for, the moment her delusion shattered. She leaned forward, eyes wet now, not from guilt, but fear. You're not going to tell anyone, right? I mean, you wouldn't do that. You're not like that. I just looked at her. Not like that? I had given her the softest version of myself for years. The version that made coffee every morning, apologized first, carried groceries, and remembered her mother's birthday better than she did. And what did she do with it? She fed it to a man who watched me like entertainment. I stood up slowly and took the mug from her hand. No, I'm not going to tell anyone. Not yet. That's the difference between me and you, Mallory. I left her sitting there in silence. That night, she tried something new. She climbed into bed beside me and tried to touch me, not seductively, but softly, like a gesture of comfort, maybe even fear. I didn't push her away. I let her arms stay there, but I didn't reach back. She whispered, "I made a mistake." And I replied, "You're only saying that because you think I can destroy you." That shut her down. She rolled over and stared at the wall for hours. But the real storm hadn't even hit yet. Because the next day, while she was at work, a package arrived. Not for me, not for her, but for someone she never wanted to meet. A person who knew about Bryce. A person who mattered more than she realized. And when she saw the name on that envelope later that evening, she would finally understand. Her affair wasn't a secret anymore. It was a story that had begun writing itself without her permission. It was a plain manila envelope. No return address. No stamp. Just my doorstep. A name handwritten across the front in ink that had bled slightly from the morning dew. But not my name. It said, A. Keating. I stared at it for a moment too long, as if the handwriting might change if I blinked. But it didn't. Mallory had no sister. No cousin by that name. But I knew that name. Everyone in Mallory's life did. Avery Keating. Her boss. More specifically, the woman whose husband once sued Mallory's company for emotional distress after walking in on an affair between his wife and a coworker. The case had been settled quietly. Nobody ever said names. But whispers flew. Mallory always insisted it was another branch. I picked up the envelope and brought it inside. Waited until 6:41 p.m., exactly when Mallory usually walked through the door, exhausted and muttering about her team's incompetence, while pouring herself a drink. That night, she looked a little more fragile. Her mascara wasn't even. Her blouse was wrinkled. Her smile cracked halfway to her lips. I placed the envelope on the kitchen island without a word. She froze. "What's that?" she asked too quickly. I tilted my head. "Was hoping you'd tell me. It's not mine." She walked toward it slowly, then stopped halfway across the room. Like she'd recognized a landmine. "You opened it?" she asked. I let that hang in the air before answering. "No. Should I have?" That's when she dropped the act. "Lowell," she said, and I swear I saw her knees wobble. "Listen to me. Whatever's in that envelope, it's not what you think." She reached for it. I stepped between her and the counter. "Stop," I said, calmly. "This name. A. Keating. That's Avery, right? Your manager." She opened her mouth, then closed it. So I continued. "She's married, isn't she? Or was?" Mallory blinked rapidly. Her fingers twitched. Then she nodded, barely. And that's when the final domino started to tip. "I've been trying to piece things together," I told her. "Ellis found odd payments between you and Bryce. Frequent ones. But they didn't make sense as hush money. Too regular. Too small." I leaned in, just slightly. "You weren't just having an affair. You were part of something. Something bigger. And now someone doesn't want to be left holding the grenade." Mallory's eyes darted to the envelope. Her voice broke. "You don't understand. You think this was just about him? It wasn't, Lowell. It wasn't just God. I didn't mean for you to." I raised a hand. "Then what was it?" She didn't answer. She took a step back like a cornered animal. Then, whispering like it was a confession to a priest. "It started with Avery." Silence. "She and Bryce. They've done this before. Different cities. Same setup. It's like a game to them. She gets off on manipulation. Emotional control. Bryce finds married women who are vulnerable, isolates them, plays the savior. And then they trap them." My blood went cold. "Trap?" Mallory nodded. "They never ask for money. Not directly. But things happen. Compromising photos. Recordings. They make it feel like romance at first, but then it's leverage. And if you try to leave..." I didn't let her finish. "You're saying you were the victim now?" She didn't answer. I turned away, but her voice followed me. Soft. Hollow. "I never meant to hurt you. At first, Bryce was escape. You were always so predictable. So gentle. I felt invisible. And he made me feel powerful. But then I couldn't stop. I couldn't back out. I was ashamed, Lowell. But I was also scared." I turned back slowly. "So what's in that envelope?" She finally answered. "Insurance. I told Bryce I'd made copies. Just in case. I wanted to scare him. Make him stop. And he didn't believe me. But I guess, now he does." I opened the envelope right in front of her. She gasped. Inside were photos. Not of her. Not of Bryce, but of Avery and someone else. A man I didn't recognize. Probably her husband. They were time-stamped. GPS tagged. Hotel room angles. Clearly taken without consent. But the last one. It was of Mallory. Standing in our bedroom. Talking on the phone. She looked terrified. And behind her, in the mirror's reflection, a figure. Male. Close. Watching her. I looked up. Mallory's lips trembled. Her voice cracked. I didn't take that one. Now it wasn't just betrayal. Now it was danger. And we weren't the ones holding the knife anymore. It started with a knock. Not frantic. Not forceful. Just a knock, measured and deliberate, like whoever was on the other side didn't need to rush because they already knew they'd be let in. Mallory and I were still standing in the kitchen, that manila envelope open between us like a crime scene. The last photo still faced upward. Her reflection in the mirror. The figure behind her. The timestamp that placed it exactly 6 nights ago. I hadn't spoken in 5 minutes. Neither had she. The knock came again. Mallory stiffened. Her face went pale. She didn't even ask who it could be. She didn't have to. Her body reacted before her brain could form an excuse. Don't answer it, she whispered. But I already was walking. At the door stood a man. Mid-40s. Clean suit. Thin frame. Not imposing, but not forgettable either. He wasn't holding a briefcase. He wasn't selling anything. And he wasn't smiling. Lowell? He asked. I nodded, instinctively defensive. I'm not here for you, he said before I could speak. Then his eyes moved past me, toward the kitchen, where Mallory had just barely stepped into view. I'm here for her. She gasped. Actually gasped. Her hands flew to her mouth. I told you to never come here, she muttered, as if reciting a line from a past she thought was buried. The man stepped inside without being invited. Didn't even glance back at me. I warned you, Mallory, he said. But you chose to make copies. I stepped between them. Who the hell are you? He looked at me now, unflinching. My name doesn't matter. What matters is that your wife has involved you in something she was supposed to keep isolated. And now you're exposed. That was her choice, not mine. Mallory grabbed my arm. Lowell, please. You don't understand. He's not with Bryce. He's with Avery. They work in tandem. There's more. There's layers. Stop talking, the man said sharply. Then he softened, almost apologetically. This doesn't have to get worse. We don't want anything from you, Lowell. You're not the target. You were collateral. But now, your knowledge creates risk. My pulse spiked. Risk for whom? He took out a phone, an old flip model, burner style, and played a voice recording. It was grainy, but unmistakable. It was Mallory's voice. Panicked. He's getting suspicious. If he finds out, everything falls apart. He's not as soft as I thought. He's asking questions. He's watching. Then Bryce's voice. Then push him away. Make him feel like he's the problem. The more he doubts himself, the less he'll see coming. Silence. Then her again. And if that doesn't work? Bryce replied. Then we let Avery decide what happens next. The man closed the phone. Looked straight at me. Your wife gave permission. Mallory shook her head violently. No. No. That was before I knew what they really wanted. Before they turned it into this. I didn't know they'd follow him. I thought it was just insurance. Too late for that, he said. You started a fire you can't put out. He placed a second envelope on the entry table. This one was thicker. He didn't explain it. You have 3 days, he said. After that, your name gets added to the narrative. And I assure you, that's not a place you want to be. With that, he turned and left. No threat. No demand. Just an exit that felt like the end of something bigger than I could grasp. I picked up the new envelope, but Mallory snatched it from my hands. Don't, she whispered. You've been lying since this started, I replied. Why should I trust you now? Because if you open this, she said with a tremble in her voice, you won't sleep again. And I need you awake. She backed away, envelope in hand, clutching it like it was a grenade with a loose pin. That night, she didn't go to bed. She sat in the living room, lights off, eyes wide open, envelope untouched on her lap. And I realized something horrifying. I wasn't just dealing with a cheating spouse anymore. I was living with someone who had made a deal with people who didn't believe in forgiveness, only control. And the one thing they feared most? Exposure. Which meant if I moved wrong, if I opened the wrong file, said the wrong thing, or trusted the wrong person, I wouldn't just lose her. I'd lose everything. She fell asleep in the chair sometime around 4 a.m., her arms curled protectively around the envelope like it contained her last breath. I waited, not out of malice. Out of necessity. I sat in the hallway with the lights off, watching her chest rise and fall, barely audible. I could hear the wind rattling one of the window panes behind her. Even the house felt nervous. When I was sure she was under, I moved. I'd never crept like that in my own home before, not like a man sneaking around his wife, but like a man trying to avoid stepping on the trap she was unknowingly sitting in. I reached her. Gently, painfully gently, I slid the envelope from beneath her hands. She didn't stir. I went to the garage, locked the door, and sat on the floor beneath the workbench. It felt safer there. Colder. Like distance gave me permission. The envelope had no seal. It wasn't meant to be mailed. It was meant to be delivered. Quietly. Personally. With intent. Inside, a USB drive. A single sheet of paper with a login, a password, and nothing else. No logo. No company. No hint. I used my old laptop. Disconnected from Wi-Fi. Air-gapped, like Ellis had taught me when handling sensitive files. I plugged in the drive. There was only one file inside. Mark_05_final.mov. I hesitated, hand resting on the mouse. Then I double-clicked. The screen went black at first, then static, then a slow fade into what looked like security footage. Not of a building, not of an office. It was my house. Our house. From the outside. The video had been spliced together, angles changing every 15 seconds. It was taken over multiple nights, all stitched seamlessly. Footage of Mallory. Coming and going. Talking on the phone in the driveway. Meeting someone by the gate. Once, Bryce. Twice, someone else. And then I saw myself. Leaving for work. Jogging. Bringing in the trash cans. But this wasn't casual observation. It was targeted. Every frame of me had a time code and a caption. Someone had logged my behaviors. Leaves at 7:46. Returns 6:19. Walks without checking surroundings. Trust level. High. It got worse. Inside the footage was a feed I didn't recognize. A camera inside the guest room. One I didn't install. It showed me watching TV, once shirtless, once asleep with a blanket. Alone. Unaware. There were labels for this too. Subject has not noticed cam placement, closet vent. Sensory pattern, passive. And then audio kicked in. A conversation. Mallory's voice. I think we should stop. He's not reacting. It's like he's folding inward. Another voice. Female. Calm. Controlled. Older. Probably Avery. Then the conditioning is working. Distance is step one. You're not supposed to feel guilty. But I do. Don't. He's a lesson. Nothing more. A lesson. My marriage, my life, had become someone's project. A controlled descent into psychological fog. A test, maybe. Or worse, a system. I clicked pause. I sat there for nearly 10 minutes without moving. Then I rewound the video. There was a single frame I hadn't noticed before. Brief. Less than a second. A still shot of a document. Blurry, almost subliminal, but I could make out one line at the top. Case study. Lowell, Phase 2 initiated. It wasn't about an affair. It wasn't about love or betrayal or sex. It was about control. And I was the blueprint. I backed out, yanked the drive, snapped it in half, crushed the connector with a wrench, and dropped the pieces into 2 different garbage bags. But I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was awakened. I went back inside. Mallory was still asleep in the chair. For a moment, I stared at her, the way you might stare at a childhood photo of someone who's been missing for years. There was no comfort left in her face. Only questions. And fear disguised as exhaustion. When her eyes blinked open, I was already sitting across from her again. She jolted. What are you? I opened it, I said. She sat up too fast. Lowell, you don't understand. I understand perfectly, I cut in. And now I know what you are. She covered her mouth. You're not just someone who cheated, I said. You're someone who volunteered me. Who handed me over to people who study trust like it's a disease. Tears welled in her eyes. I didn't know it would go that far, she whispered. It was supposed to be a game. A push. To test the limits. That's what Avery said. Limits. I repeated. Of what? How much betrayal one person can take before he breaks. She nodded slowly. She picked you because you're quiet. Kind. Predictable. She said it was like playing with gravity. Watching something fall, piece by piece. I leaned in. So what happens when gravity reverses? Mallory couldn't answer. And then, behind us, the front door opened. No knock. Just a slow, deliberate creak. We both turned. And standing there wasn't Bryce. Or Avery. or the man in the suit. It was someone neither of us expected. Someone I hadn't seen in 13 years. Someone who knew what happened before it started. And he was holding his own envelope. He stepped into the house like he'd been here before. And once upon a time, he had. His name was Caleb, my older brother. We hadn't spoken in over a decade. Not since our father's funeral. Not since the night he told me I was too soft for this world and walked away from everything, me, our family, the house, all of it. So seeing him now, standing in my doorway, holding an envelope identical to the one that started it all, made the floor shift under my feet. He looked at Mallory first, then at me, then at the envelope in his hand. I told you they'd come for you, he said. Not with anger. Not even with pity. Just a strange kind of regret. You knew? I asked, my voice a mix of disbelief and exhaustion. Caleb nodded and sat down without being invited. I've been tracking them for years. It started with my ex, then with another woman. I followed patterns. Watched them repeat. I tried to warn you once, remember? That letter I sent 5 years ago? You never replied. I thought you were drunk, I said. I was, he admitted. But I was also right. He dropped the envelope on the table. Mallory flinched. Inside were names. Dozens. Dates. Cities. All victims of the same operation, a private network run by Avery and Bryce, designed to target emotionally vulnerable spouses. Not for money. Not for sex. For psychological experimentation. Controlled betrayal. Monitored responses. Emotional decay as data. What they're doing isn't illegal, Caleb said. Not in the traditional sense. But it's inhuman. And they hide behind that. And the footage? I asked. The cameras. They install them. With consent from the partner involved. Once they get inside the house, they plant devices. Then they start the game. I looked at Mallory. She was shaking. Silent. She had no defense left. Caleb pulled a burner phone from his pocket and slid it across the table. I've got everything we need to take them down. But I need your help. You're the only one who made it to phase 3 and didn't crack. Phase 3. The moment you stopped reacting. When you started observing back. That's when they usually break their subjects. But you didn't. You turned. I blinked. I wasn't a failure in this story. I wasn't a background character. I had survived their experiment. And now I had the choice to end it. Mallory finally spoke, her voice no louder than paper tearing. I want to help. I know what I did was unforgivable, but if I can stop them, I want to. I turned to her. For the first time, I didn't see her as my wife. I saw her as another casualty. Just like me. You'll testify? Caleb asked her. She nodded, slowly. Everything. Every step. I'll give names. Files. Even the ones I hid. We spent the next 4 hours at the dining table, building the case. Every password, every hidden account, every meeting location. Ellis joined by phone, and by morning, we had a digital blueprint of the entire operation. A week later, the story broke. Avery Keating and Bryce Banning were named in a federal investigation involving unlawful surveillance, psychological manipulation, and covert spousal coercion. The media spun it into something wild, the love experiment, they called it. But the real headline, the one no one saw, was mine. Lowell wins himself back. Because I didn't want revenge. I didn't want blood. I just wanted clarity. And in the wreckage, I found it. Mallory moved out 2 months later. No screaming. No blame. Just distance and quiet understanding. We signed the papers on a Thursday. I watched her walk away, not with anger, but with release. Caleb stayed. Not forever, but long enough to rebuild what we both thought was broken. We fixed the porch light together. Laughed about how bad we were at drywall. And me? I started writing again. Not stories about pain, but stories about rebuilding. Because sometimes the most powerful ending isn't vengeance or justice or punishment. Sometimes, it's peace. The kind that comes not when you forget what they did to you, but when it no longer has the power to touch your heart.